Hey guys, today customer just brought in this old John boat. He does a lot of river fishing. We're going to repower it with the new Minn Kota Fortrex as it gives him the ability to quickly stow and deploy the motor. Very responsive foot pedal steering, and it's a very robust, durable trolling motor. First thing I like to do is just unpackage everything. So in the box, what we have here is we got our mount, our mono arm. We got our prop. Obviously the motor with the foot pedal already attached to it. We've got the stabilizing arm. Bag of hardware, secure strap, and our owner's manual. Just kind of get everything laid out, put it up on the bow of the boat. Always important to reference your owner's manual, which comes in the bag here. And it'll give you, instructions on how to install it, the tools you need to complete this project. And I'll just read them through real quick. A number 2 Phillips screwdriver, 2 number 3 Phillips screwdrivers, a 1/4 inch Allen wrench, a drill, a 9/32 drill bit, a 7/16 box end wrench, a torque wrench, file or sandpaper, a hacksaw, marker or pencil, an 1/8 inch flat screwdriver, an 1/8 inch Allen wrench, and some Loctite. So this is a little bit unique installation. Ideally, when I do a cable drive motor on a boat, I like to mount the motor to the arm first and mount it in a certain orientation where the head of the trolling motor isn't going to be hanging past the gunnel of the boat. Because of what we got going on here with this bow, I'm going to go ahead and mount the trolling motor base first, and then we'll hang the motor on it. We don't, because of the boat here and because of the fisherman and the stuff that he fishes in, his type of fishing, we're not going to be too concerned if the head of the motor does hang past the boat. The one thing I like to be really aware of is when you're mounting this, to have this motor ramp hanging over the front of the boat, probably 3 to 4 inches. And what that does is when you're stowing your motor and taking it out of the water, is the lower unit will hit that and turn to the correct stow orientation, and it'll keep the lower unit from hitting the front of the boat. So to open up the scissor mount, there's a safety latch on here, and that's automatically pressed down when the motor's mounted to it. But to open this up, we need to physically or manually lower that latch. So I'm gonna hold that down and give our cord a quick pop. Okay, and now we'll open it up. The mounting holes are exposed here. We can go ahead and mark those, which we'll do right now. You'll see a number of holes on here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 7 holes in here. In the owner's manual, when you refer to it, you'll want a minimum of 4. This particular boat, I really think we're gonna get all 6 of them. So I'm gonna mark them, and then I'll reach underneath the bow here. And just to double check, make sure there isn't any obstructions underneath before we start drilling holes. So our holes are marked. We're going to get a drill with a 1/4 inch drill bit and drill these holes out. Okay, we got our holes drilled. We're going to go ahead and set the base up on the deck here. And we have the strap. As you'll notice, there's a hem on this strap. So I'll get that slid underneath and kind of pull that hem right up to the base of our side plate. Right about there, and then I'll fold that over and just fasten the Velcro. That way, when he is out fishing and he takes the strap off, it's hanging inside of the boat and not outside. That's why we put the hem up right to the side plate. So we'll go ahead and just fasten that right there. The other thing I like to do is we have our stainless steel bolts with their stainless steel nylocks. Okay, what I like to do is just put a dab of anti-seize on each bolt just to prevent the gulling of the stainless steel nut in the washer, the seizing up when you're tightening them. So we'll go ahead and put a little anti-seize on each one of these. So we drilled our 9/16 holes. It's important to use that size. If you use a little bit smaller size, you're not going to get your bolt through. If you drill too big of a hole, you're going to get a little slop after everything's mounted. Also in the owner's manual, they refer to putting the strap between the first two set of holes and the second two, which we did. We'll just kind of slide it back a little bit so it's centered in between these two holes. Okay, we got our bolts through everything. Now I'm just going to take our nylocks and our washers and our number 3 bit, and I'm going to start every one of these. Now we're using an impact driver on this installation. A regular screwdriver will work also. It's a little bit faster with this, with an impact driver. I wouldn't use just a drill and a tip on it, just because you have more of a tendency to strip the head of that bolt out. It's also easier to get everything tighter with an impact. All right, so with that done, it's ready to mount the motor to our motor base. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna just go back to the stow position, but I'm gonna put a little block of wood in here and I'll show you why we're gonna do that. So by blocking this up, a lot of times the shaft of the motor is longer and you're fighting, you know, it's hitting the floor. By doing this, it raises everything up and it makes it easier to drop that motor onto the base here. Before we do that though, we need to remove the screw that fastens the motor to our mono arm. So I'm gonna get our Allen wrench and I'm gonna remove that screw. And you'll notice a bag that's attached to the mount. And that is a pin that's going to fasten the lift assist spring or shock to the top of this arm. So make sure you set that aside because we're going to need that later. So we're going to set that aside. On the mount here, we have these little ears, and in the mount, or the bow guard is what it's called, there's some slots in here. So that's just going to drop right in place. Right there. So that screw we took out earlier, that's going to go right in this hole, and that's going to fasten the bow guard to our mono arm. Okay, so with that, our motor's mounted. Now we need to mount our lift assist spring from the base to the mono arm. So we'll go ahead and we'll put it in a half stow, half deploy position, and we'll just kind of let the motor rest there. Okay, so now in that bag that we took out earlier, you'll see that there's 2 screws, 2 spacers, and a pin. So how I do this is we have our pin, and I'll start one of the Phillips screws in it. I'll then feed it through one of the holes and put one of our spacers on. And I'll poke that pin out of the spacer just a little bit. Okay, then I'll push it through. And then what I like to do is I'll take my screwdriver, put it through the hole on the outside, and thread the spacer onto the screwdriver, and then push the screwdriver out or chase it with the pin. Then I'll start this other screw. And these do have a little Loctite on it, so you aren't going to get a lot of bite doing it by hand. And simply snug everything up. What this lift assist does is it greatly reduces the weight when you're putting it out of the water, and also slows it down when you're putting it in the water. It takes upward of 40% of the weight off when you're pulling it out of the water. So a little more on packaging. We're going to expose this lower unit here. Okay. In the packaging, on the end of the armature shaft, there's a nut, a red washer, a stainless washer, a spacer, and our shear pin. Of all that stuff we just took off, we're going to use the shear pin, the washer, and the nut. Purpose of the shear pin is just protects the lower unit, just so if you do hit something hard, it won't compromise the lower unit. That'll break before damage is done to the lower unit of the trolling motor. We're going to slide that on, our washer, and again what I like to do is just put a dab of anti-seize on those threads. And we'll take our 9/16 socket and then just snug it up. And you'll feel it bottom out right about there. Okay. that completes the prop installation on this Fortrex. So the final component of the Fortrex installation is the stabilizing arm. The reason for that is it prevents from excess bouncing, putting stress on the front of the boat, either over the water on big waves or even bouncing down the road. So to do that, we're going to remove this mounting bracket. Just simply unthread it. We won't use the nylocks in this installation, so we're just going to remove those. And there's two locations to mount the stabilizing arm, either outside or inside. Obviously, in this particular installation, it isn't going to catch anything here, so we have to put it on the inside. So simply remove the nuts, slide the bolt through, and then you'll see on the inside of the bow guard, there's a little recessed area to put the nut. So we'll hold it in there and get it started, and then do the same thing with the bottom. So we got the fasteners started into the bolts that we held in place. Now we're just going to snug them up. So looking at this stabilizing arm, obviously it's too long if you thread it in here. So this is going to be the top. So how to do this is you flip it upside down and you just set the top end actually upside down onto the bottom, onto the boat. And then you mark about 3/4 of an inch above that. And that's your cut line right there. So we're going to go ahead and put it in the bench vise and get our hacks out and cut it to length. So our stabilizing arm is cut to length. We're going to put the bottom back on. We're going to deploy it slightly just to give us enough room to thread this into the mounting hardware. And then you have the cap that goes right over the top of the threads. So after mounting the stabilizing arm, you want to put it in the stow position and make sure it's locked down tight, okay? And if you do need to make any adjustments, you can simply lower it a little bit and then just tighten it up with this bottom plastic nut. And that'll give you a little more length here if you need to make any adjustments to it. So to complete the installation of this Minn Kota Fortrex is to apply power to it. Every trolling motor out of the box comes with the power cord with 2 ring tongues on it. That's designed for a permanent power supply connection. In today's installation, we're not going to do that because we don't have the appropriate plug to fit this boat, but it's as simple as cutting off these ring terminals, stripping off the insulation, taking butt connectors, maybe a piece of heat shrink, making a good heat shrink connection over the top of it, plug it in, and away you go. So there's another cable coming out of the base of this foot pedal, and what that is an extension for the Universal Sonar 2. That's a built-in transducer in the lower unit of this trolling motor that gives you 83 and 200 kilohertz sonar as well as temperature. And you'll notice this really isn't going to plug into any sonar, so there's a number of different adapters that are made that would simply screw into this and then plug into the back of your fish finder that you might have. Universal Sonar is compatible with a number of different fish finder manufacturers. So that completes the installation of our Minn Kota Fortrex. And you'll see just with that mono arm and the bolts we have in there, this thing is rock solid for a number of years of durable service on it. So hopefully with the steps I've given you, the little tips and tricks, and also going by the owner's manual, follow these steps and hopefully your installation will go smooth.